Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 3rd, 2024 Southern Shores Town Council meeting. We're very glad to see everyone here tonight. Join me, if you will, in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic which stands one nation under God. We have a moment of silence now. Thank you. Council, are there any amendments to our agenda that you see in front of you, or can I have a motion to approve as presented?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. We have an approved agenda. Thank you. Council, we have a consent agenda which consists of a resolution concerning the council meeting schedule for 2025 and a couple of minutes that have been previously shared and approved, I think. Any questions or discussion about the consent agenda?
Yeah, I have a change on the minutes for October 10th. I was not present at that meeting. And
October 10?
yeah.
Okay.
He was here. He was at the meeting. Okay. Cool. He was here.
He was here. You know, he.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a correction for the October 10 minutes. Thanks. Appreciate you pointing that out, Mark. Any other discussion about the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion, second. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion carries. Now we have some presentations. We have some important people in the room tonight. Thank you. Who starts? Chief? Cliff? Somebody? No? Are we going to go into staff reports? Sorry. Okay. My bad. We'll hear from our Deputy Town Manager and Planning Director, Wes Haskett. Good evening, Wes.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Brief report for y'all tonight. I'll start with permits from November. There were a total of 35 permits issued. Those consisted of 5 zoning permits, 14 building permits, and 16 trade permits. Total amount of fees collected in November by the planning department was $18,785.02. With respect to code enforcement, in November, there were 3 warning citations mailed for solid waste ordinance violations. With respect to the Outer Banks Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan update, I reported to you all in May that the current Outer Banks Hazard Mitigation Plan is set to expire next year. So we, a committee working with a consultant hired by Dare County, have been working on updating the plan, and the consultant is they've almost completely drafted the update to the plan, which should be, they're hoping to be ready this month. Next month. And once it is drafted ready, we'll have it posted on the website, the project website, and share it from the town website. And then they will also have to send it to the state and to FEMA for them to comment on it. And at some point, we'll be bringing it to you all for adoption in the place where we have currently adopted. And then lastly, with respect to the planning board, they will meet here in the Pitch Center on December 16th at 5 o'clock. And the purpose of the meeting, the board should discuss and possibly consider the zoning text amendment application submitted by the town to amend Town Code Section 36-132A1 which addresses development and sale of certain non-conforming lots without recombination. Any questions? So recently, there was an appeal application that was submitted on a property of a formal interpretation issued for a property that consisted, or properties that consisted of 30 non-conforming lots. And we worked with the applicant's representative and with discussions and how to, in mediation, basically, to see if there was a way to go around this, work it out for both parties. And, I'd rather not go into specifics at the moment since the ZTO will apply to all properties. But
It will apply to all.
if it was adopted, it would apply in all zoning districts.
Any other questions for Wes? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Chief Cole. Good evening, sir.
Mayor, members of council, the police report from November 2024. As you can see, we had 1,675 calls for service. That's 581 up from last year. A lot of that is additional property checks, business checks. Let's see, incidents, which were reported crimes, we had 8 of those. We had 5 criminal arrests. Most of those consist of the 2 DWIs we had. 2 were traffic related and 1 was food related. Officers conducted 76 traffic stops. And out of that 76 traffic stops, they handed out a total of 15 written citations and another 57 warning citations. We had 4 ordinance violations for the month and 2 reportable motor vehicle accidents. Any questions on that? I'd just like to share a few pictures here. On November 13th, we held our annual luncheon, awards luncheon for the officers. And the ones that could make it, we had a couple that were sick. Next one, Sergeant Cook, he received the Top Gun Award. And next one, that's just a picture of, this is SRO, Tracy Mann. She was selected by her peers, not by the chief or the deputy chief, but by all of the officers as the officer. So, anyway, we just wanted to. The other thing I'd like to share is I appreciate the officers, all the support, because this is going to be the last official meeting for Chief Slagle. I truly appreciate him having me back for coming back, filming when I was or whatever I had. So it was always nice to know that I had something like that. So I would just like to acknowledge my appreciation for his support. And there'll be more to come. I believe some of you already got the email. We'll acknowledge it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's have a round of applause.
And his son is here, part of Boy Scouts. So he's supposed to observe commissioners' meeting, so don't let him down.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Deputy Chief? Come on up. You have to come up after we give you a round of applause.
Mayor, members of council. As the chief explained, we had our officers in November. And also, just wanted to give out pins for years of service and other things the officers accomplished throughout the year. One big accomplishment that we could not get done that day was Chief Cole is 40 years in law. We give out pins for years in law enforcement, 5, 10, 15, 20. They don't make one for 40. So,
Just skip it.
so we went ahead and ordered something for him when it did not come in that day. So we wanted to honor him tonight. As a little bit of a background, Chief Cole began his career at the Village of Horseheads Police Department in June of 1984. I was 10 years old. David Cole moved up through the ranks and became chief of police at the Village of Horseheads on November 9th of 2021, and then retired in November of 2006. As a department, we were fortunate enough to have that he was not done with police work, and he was hired as chief of police in Southern Shores in February of 2007. The chief has been a great leader to all of us throughout the years. He's always put the officers and the needs of the community before himself. Chief has always had an open door policy, and all the officers can rely on him for guidance, whether it be in the workplace or personal life. David Coles not only served as chief, but he served as interim town manager, volunteers his time off with Helping Hands, and also served on the board of the Outer Banks Food Pantry. On the behalf of the department, the officers in the town, I would like to congratulate you on your 40 years. And with that, on behalf of the 40 years, this award and appreciation of 40 years of outstanding and dedicated service to the communities you have served. 1984 to 2024.
Wow.
I'm gonna take these off. I look like an old man.
Next to another one.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, you got me good, John, but you're not retired yet. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate everything.
Chief Limbacher. Good evening, sir. It's good to see you.
Just a brief report. This is typically our sleep time of month, our sleep time of year. I apologize, it's still not in the right order, but hopefully next month will be straightened out. So pretty simply this morning, trash fire, motor vehicle fire, gas leak, electrical problem, parking or shorting, a lockout, public service assistance, assist the police, 4 fire alarms, 2 each of our beach delivery, beach wheelchair delivery, and smoke alarm service, 2 cover up or standby, 3 dispatched or canceled en route, 27 EMS calls for a total of 52 calls for the month, same as the last month. So last year it was 60 at this time. So anybody have any questions on that? Pretty simple this time. Turkey trot, for those of you who don't know, Thanksgiving morning went well. I was glad we had someone there because we just had a minor little abrasion. So an older woman fell during the run. We just had people there to easily take care of our guys who were there. So, and obviously, John's not here, but I'm dismayed that he's leaving also because me and John are very good friends, and it's nice to have the top 3 guys make all the decisions. Usually a problem. Problems don't become problems because we all get along very well. Gonna miss them, but that's the way it is.
It is, yes. Very good. Appreciate it so much. Appreciate everything you guys do for the town. Next, we'll hear from our town manager, Cliff. Good evening.
Thank you. Brief updates on some projects. First, the Juniper Culvert,
As we announced yesterday, the project is scheduled to start next week with the culvert being closed to all traffic, both pedestrian and boat traffic, starting December 9th. The crews going to set up their road barricades sometime towards the end of the week. They'll kind of make them face down and they'll set everything up Monday morning. Put up the message board on Juniper to let folks know that that bridge will be closed starting December 9th. The plan is for a local subcontractor, CD Rose, to come in and build the sheet piles in, start doing the grade and removing asphalt, and start to work on getting the culvert out pretty quickly. We've made all the necessary notifications, I believe, to EMS and of course emergency management schools, just so everyone's aware and they can make their plans accordingly. And so 210 days, hopefully it'll all be sorry.
Sorry. As residents asked if there's a sign to be put here to remind them not to go home that way.
Yes, sir. At Chick-fil-A.
Working with some of the citizens for that, I guess they can't remember. So they work down there and live here. It's like them to just come through and then turn right. Now they're able to do that.
Yeah, we'll
Just
put
for a while. I think if you have a sign like you have up there right now, that'd be great. I think we have two of those. Don't we?
I think we can borrow one.
Huh?
We'll
We can borrow one. Yeah, just to tell them that they don't, remember to go to Chippewa because they're going to go home.
We'll try and catch with the road or bridge close and close to Chickasaw so folks
All right.
don't start.
That'd be great. Thanks.
The new path on NC 12 on the west side, that has been completed. The same crew got the contract to do the replacement of the multi-use path around 3rd to 5th Avenue, and they're going to start doing that. We learned last week that we received another tourism impact grant from the County Tourism Bureau. That's a $91,000 award, which we have to match with 25%, but that will continue the replacement of existing path, Fifth Avenue towards Hillcrest. And that actually be funded in 20. So I'm pleased with how those projects are progressing. Some area improvements, the driveway, the exposed aggregate driveway was completed last week. There's still some work that needs to be done. There's a significant difference in grade between the road and the edge. A lot of that is you can see in the southwest corner. It's raised, it's elevated to try and keep folks out of the mud, and so that it's going to require some backfill. They also need some additional acid wash to get the exposed aggregate. And about all that exists left to finish that up is some vegetation, some plantings, kind of waiting to work with we got a contractor we've been working with, trying to get to a plan that we can both agree on and afford. And we'll have that sign up soon. And then finally, the town hall remodel. Your last meeting, you all authorized me to go back to the low bidder and try and reduce some of the cost. Staff met, and we think we have a plan forward with reducing some of the scope of that project and utilizing space that we have here in the pit center. We feel like we can accomplish what we need to at a significant cost savings and still put all the safety measures in place. And the new doors, lock system, the camera system, all that should schedule to start at the first of the year. So I'm hoping at the January meeting, I'll have a price to come back to you with for funding. And that's all I had.
Any questions real quick? Go ahead, Paul.
I didn't have a question about any of those, but I know there's been a little publicity lately about this, the legislature, the amendment they tacked onto the bill, no local government downsizing without consent. Are we working with Dare County to, it sounds like our local officials are pretty upset about this also.
Yes, ma'am. That bill, Senate Bill 382, it started out as a dental bill.
3-page bill.
And it quickly morphed into the relief bill for the hurricane folks out in the western
Right.
part of the state. It went to 132 pages, and on the 131st page is language about zoning. It does require, it's passed. But it requires, if you're going to make any changes in the zoning district, that down zones or add the use, you have to get the consent of every property owner in that district, which is impossible. That's just not going to happen. And then there are some other provisions in that bill that, like I said, if you tried to downzone or if you tried to reduce density, if you tried to increase a buffer, if you tried to increase the lot size for development, all of that's going to require 100% consent from property owners. And if you have a use that we determined a while back, we put some prohibited uses in the zoning code. We wouldn't be able to do that anymore unless we had consent. So it pretty much is another tool that from local government. From what we understand, it was put in as a safeguard for the folks out west. To, if any of them they've lost property, they're trying to rebuild. That towns aren't able to restrict them from doing that. But it became a statewide issue, and all the towns in Dare County have been collectively working. I know the county manager has spoken with Senator Manning about trying to get that corrected as soon as possible.
Okay.
It's a mess right now.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Anything else for Cliff? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Philip, you're up. Good to see you.
Good to see you all. No report. Hope you all have a Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Appreciate it. General public comment? Anybody signed up?
I'm not familiar with it.
Would you like to just, let me see if there's somebody signed up, and then if there's not, I'll just. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, Carolyn Hoover, and I live on 108 Last Hunt Lane in Chickahaw. And I have a question regarding the closing of the bridge. Mainly, not any issues with it or anything. Happy to not have the humps and everything. But there have been a lot of questions about access to Route 12, especially as this continues on and traffic gets worse, and whether there's been any discussion with NCDOT about turning lights so that people will be able to exit, not even just left turns, but also right turns when, like, when the huge rush hour occurs in the afternoon, be able to get at. So I didn't know whether any work had been done with NCDOT. Okay, we'd appreciate it. I think everybody gets tired of sitting at that light. It is like 4 minutes, or it seems like 10, but it's 4. Anyway, thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I'm Mark LeBlanc from 9 10th Avenue in Southern Shores. I want to make brief remarks urging you not to adopt ZTA 3-05. No matter how well intended this is, it's another diminution of property rights. And SB 382 comes out of sentiments of people who are concerned about things like that. Most candidates for council, some of the people on the council will represent that they have a strong belief in preserving personal property rights. And of course, this is not without restrictions, and I understand that. But if we go down that road, we need to look at what the necessity is for this particular ordinance, how it was developed, what the need is, what the basis of planning board action was. According to the planning board, the council did commercial regulation along the same lines as the proposed CTA tonight, and at that time said it perhaps should do something similar for residential lots, undeveloped, unimproved, I think is the term, unimproved residential lots. There are very few vacant lots in this town. I'm not sure how big a problem this is. In response to comments made to the planning board about the wealth of vegetation we have and how quickly it grows, these are from other commenters at the planning board meeting. The planning board asked if there was a tree canopy study, and the answer to that is no. Now, I would point out that LUC 10 in the comprehensive plan suggested, I've seen aerial photos of the town, and it looks very treaty to me. The comprehensive plan does list concerns over the loss of tree canopy, but says that the council may consider ordinances in the event that there's significant loss. One planning board member notes that up the street from him, there's a lot that was cleared 4 years ago. So we're done with it. Another one says he drives up the road every day and sees a lot that's been cleared and doesn't like it. I would respectfully suggest that this is legislating by anecdote. There's a lot on my street and I don't like it. I've got a lot next to me that's incredibly overgrown. It's been vacant for a long time. Another member says, this is not a tree ordinance. I don't know if we'll get a tree ordinance, but it's a step that way. And what it's designed to do is to make the process for cutting down trees more expensive and more costly. It doesn't stop you from doing it, but you've got to jump through a bunch of hoops to do it. So if you forbid lot clearing or not forbid it or make it more costly or more expensive to do so, it frankly makes the town less safe. I would commend to the council that it look up under the rubric Fire-Wise USA, the term fire escape, the dangers posed to heavily wooded communities. And one of the ways that you minimize those risks is through fire breaks. And so in fact, given the amount of vegetation in the town, I would submit that there is a danger of a conflagration happening and that perhaps vacant lots are not that bad a thing. You may scoff and say, well, gee whiz, what's that about? Well, look at Lakewood, New Jersey. Look at Lahaina, Florida. I mean, La Jolla, Lahaina, Hawaii. Florida just can't think of it.
I don't think our lights are working tonight, Mark, but can you wrap it up? Here in
Yes,
about 30
I'm
seconds?
sorry. Finally, these kinds of decisions are divisive. Much of the land use decisions are like that. I have less than 100 foot frontage. I can't do certain things to my lot, but all my neighbors have less than 100 feet. They can do something. Why can't I? Oh, their grandfather. Oh, they bought their lot before. They did whatever. One other thing, if you're going to do this, consider exempting invasive species. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Anthony Mina? Good evening.
I regret to inform you that my complaints last month have not been corrected, and the misconduct I was complaining about coming from West Haskett has continued. West Haskett filed an order on November 19th that stated there was no competent evidence presented to support my motion to preclude no evidence of fraud, criminals, conspiracy, or misconduct by town staff in an order he drafted for the planning board. When the facts or the evidence was submitted to town with the variance application as an Exhibit C and came from Ms. Sheila Kane at Southern Shores Employee. West Haskett did not comply with the allocation requirement in section 36.415B, section 36.362B when he applied for a lot width amendment in March 31st, 2023. West Haskett did not mail notice to property owners as required, post notice that affected properties as required, and West Haskett refused to tell me about the proposed zoning amendment in 4 emails to me that were specifically about lot width and were lot divisions at 75 East Dogwood Trail prior to the amendment. These problems with Mr. Haskett falsifying records include a false police report provided to Chief Cole in which he claimed he had legal basis to amend the zoning code on March 31st, 2023, which was approved by Town Council on June 6th, 2023. But he did not have meet the notification requirements. He admitted and deleted the notification requirements to Chief Cole, so it appeared that he followed legal procedure when in fact he did not. That is a criminal violation of North Carolina law, and this misconduct is just continuing throughout the appeals process now. They're running appeals, paying hundreds of dollars on subdivision applications, hundreds of dollars on variance application, hundreds of dollars on the appeal. And I've yet to get Mr. Haskett to just be honest about the facts. If I could go to a court proceeding hearing, and have the facts presented honestly to other Southern Shores employees, I would. Here I am. I respectfully request that you review your town ethics policy, which prohibits Mr. Haskett's misconduct, and consider terminating Mr. Haskett's employee with the town. I'm going to give you a copy of this email that I sent to Mr. Armfield today and asked that all Southern Shores employees provided.
Mr. Mina, we're out of time. Can you wrap it up?
Yes, I can. And it just has proof that that notification requirements were not met, and references the false report that Mr. Haskett provided to the planning board November 19th. That's more lawful for their signature without me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
This email was supposed to be provided to you because it was sent at 3:50. Town council's all the evidence you need. Thank you. I hate to come here and feel like I'm at an awards assembly.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
and
it.
Acting like the Grinch.
Thank you very much. All right. Anyone else want to do public comment this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on. No old business, so we're moving on to new business. We've got an old friend visiting us tonight. And Wilson can talk to us about our beach. Good evening, sir.
To be up here. A little chilly tonight, but it's no warmer in London right now. I don't think it didn't really matter. Hopefully, I can get through this quick enough and interestingly enough that our Boy Scout back here can stay interested in the presentation. Yeah, so we'll follow a similar presentation as we did last year. Try to keep things in order. I know you guys deal with a lot of different things as a town council, but trying to follow this order hopefully will bring back some memories and help you understand that. We'll do a quick recap of the 22-23 conversion project. We'll talk a little bit just about how the project is monitored, and then we'll talk about the results that were in the report that were provided about a month ago. And then we'll dive in a little bit of some specifics that look into project performance. Is the project performing in accordance to the way it was designed? And then we'll talk a little bit about some next steps. So project goals, we've talked about this quite a bit, but it's important to realize that the reason that the town embarked on this beach nourishment program was, one, providing reasonable level of storm damage reduction to public and private development along the coast. Number two, to mitigate long-term erosion that threaten public and private private development, recreational opportunities, and biological resources out there on the beach. And 3, maintain a healthy beach that provides sufficient usable beach and supports shorebird. And so I want to talk real quickly with these diagrams about what those goals mean and how we try to achieve those goals. And so the way that we look at this reasonable level of storm damage reduction, when we first developed the feasibility assessment back in 2017, we determined that in that northern section, houses were set back sufficient enough and the dunes were of size enough, the beach was of size enough to provide that reasonable level of storm damage reduction that we were designing for. But it was south of 4th Avenue where we needed to provide additional fill specifically to bring the level of protection up to the design level. And we've talked in the past, it's described in the report that basically we're trying to design for a Hurricane Isabel level event. So a lot of times people will talk about a 100-year storm, a 50-year storm, a 20-year storm. Isabel, if you look at all of the statistics, was around a 20, 25-year return interval. It's also the same type of storm that the town of Duck designed their project for in Killable Hills as well. And so we've used that specific storm. We increased the water levels, but we really use kind of the duration, the wave heights, and the wave periods to determine whether or not we have sufficient level of protection. So in terms of mitigating long-term erosion, long-term trend along southern shores, most of southern shores is a modest loss of sand from year to year. That changes from year to year, but in general, when you look at long terms, there is an erosion rate there. So we want to keep up with that erosion rate. We want to put enough sand out there to provide that level of protection, but we also want to keep up with that long-term erosion rate. And then in the northern area, we also want to establish and maintain a sufficient usable beach. This is the area that was determined that we did not have a sufficient usable beach in that area prior to the project. And so when we look at project performance and the goals of the project, primarily north of 4th Avenue, it was to maintain that usable beach. All right, here's a couple of diagrams that kind of simplify these principles. So this is kind of a pre-project condition. We add all this sand as part of the constructed beach fill, but it's important to realize that a good chunk of that sand needs to migrate offshore into the nearshore portion of the profile. We survey the beach. When we survey the beach, we're about 24 feet depth of water. And that's to not only account for that sand that was placed on the upper part, but when that sand moves offshore, we want to understand where all of that sand is and be able to track that from year to year. This is a construction photo, but it's kind of interesting because sometimes we talk about this and you know, sometimes it sinks in, sometimes it takes a little while to sink in, this idea that the sand does move offshore, and sometimes it happens pretty quickly. But I'll point you to this area in the northern part of the upper part of this this photo here. And when we zoom in on it, you can see that right where that pipeline comes on shore, it looks like to the north of that, the beach is actually thinner than to the south of that. But what that is actually they've broken down the project. They broke down the project because of some weather, a couple of weeks of bad weather. And just in those couple of storm events, you can see that beach was originally built to the same width. But that's that equilibration process that once it's placed, some of that sand gets pulled off into the near shore. It's kind of a cool picture that we can sort of caught that principle. But now as we get into kind of the different aspects of the project, this graphic here shows two different types of beach here. The red arrows are pointing to what we call the design beach. So that was the sand that was added to provide that level of protection for Hurricane Isabel. But the green arrows are pointing to sand that we expect to erode away in between subsequent beach nourishment projects, construction projects. So we need to make sure that we've got enough sacrificial sand or advanced fill, we call it, in that area to make sure that we maintain that design beach. And that'll come into play as we start talking about project performance. All right, this is a busy slide here, but because the project was broken up into a couple of different segments, basically what we're saying here is in the initial construction back in 2021, about 990,000 cubic yards of sand were placed along the entire beach. You can see up there that the material or the density of the fill, how many cubic yards per linear foot placed south of 4th Avenue is significantly greater than placed north of 4th Avenue, which was by design of the purpose of the project. So between November 22nd and December 30th, there was a lot of negotiations with the contractor to place additional fill material north of 7th Avenue. And ultimately, during that May event of 2023, an additional 58,100 cubic yards of sand was placed north of 7th Avenue. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how we monitor these beaches. So there's 23 profiles that stretch along the town of Southern Shores. Those are surveyed every year. We have a land crew that surveys the dune and out to a wading depth. We have a boat that surveys out to that 24-foot depth. Sometimes they go out to about 30 feet of depth, but that's all done with a survey vessel. And then when we take 2 surveys from year to year, we can kind of track the differences. So here in this example, these are some older plots. We just haven't changed this example graphic. The blue dotted line is a survey that was done in 2015. The red solid line is a survey done on the exact same line, going from land to the offshore portion in 2017. And if we just look, if we pick a specific contour here, we've got that dotted contour, the 6-foot contour across the middle of the page. We can measure whether or not that 6-foot contour has moved landward or has moved seaward between 2 subsequent profiles. And it gives us some indication of how the beach is performing. But the real way that we want to monitor this is tracking all of that volume and how it's moving from survey to survey, because we do know that a storm typically will take that sand from the upper part of the beach, it will move it out into the bars, to provide protection out there. And then during calmer periods, that sand can move back up onto the beach. And so we want to track far enough that we're not just seeing these day-to-day changes. We're seeing, what would be equated to long-term erosional trends. All right. So I mentioned we have 23 beach profiles. What you'll primarily read if you look through the report, what we'll talk about today is that we've got one survey that was done around the time that the project was completed in November. We call that our post-construction survey, our baseline survey. And then we have a year 1 survey that was done last year in 2023. And now we have a year 2 survey done in 2024. And then we'll talk a little bit about shoreline changes that have occurred from that baseline survey to 2024 over the span of about 2 years. And we'll also talk about what has happened over the last year from 23 to 24, both in terms of the shoreline change and the volume change. All right, so let's get to some results. Here we're looking at the shoreline change. So pick that contour and just see how the distance, how the beach is either moving landward or moving seaward. We're not talking about volume here. If those numbers are positive, we're talking about the beach has actually moved seaward. So we have more beach than we did previously. If those numbers are negative, it means we have less sand, okay? So in the northern section, you see that we've gained about 16.6 feet of beach since the project was constructed. But it's important to realize that because sand was placed there in May, that's why that number is positive and the rest of the numbers are negative. You would expect those numbers to be negative because of that equilibration process that we talked about earlier, where that sand is moving offshore. So on the right-hand side, we have the rates that were measured over the 5 years prior to the beach nourishment project going in. So we did have a positive rate in the northern section, but negative rates in the central and southern. But right now, all of those rates in the central and southern are higher. But again, I go back to this diagram where we show that equilibration process. Last year, those rates that we're showing were even higher. This year, they're a little bit lower. At some point in time, we would expect them to normalize as you get more and more years out and get closer to those long-term rates over on the right-hand side. Okay, same rates on the right-hand side here. Those are long-term rates. But what you see in the middle are the rates based on the last 2 years. So from 23 to 24, we actually gained some in the central section, not only in the northern section, but we gained some in the central section as but we have lost some beach width, or we did lose some beach width between June 23 and June 24 over the long term. But the overall rate was positive, which is a good thing. All right. So now we're no longer talking about the shoreline change. Now we're talking about actual volumes. The numbers in the middle are the actual project volumes that were placed. So the amount of sand that was placed as part of the project. So total, a little over 1 million cubic yards of sand was placed. The numbers on the right-hand side is the amount of volume we're measuring since the project was constructed to June 2024. So we placed 124,000 during the project, but that number says that since the project went in, the northern section has actually gained close to 200,000 cubic yards more than what was placed there. Now, 58,000 or 60,000 of that was the material that was placed in May, so that number is not quite as big as it seems. But if we move down to the central section, we placed 580,000. Since then, we've actually gained 185,200 cubic yards. In the southern section, placed 343,000 during construction, and we have actually gained a little bit. Although I'll show you over the last year, we've lost a little. We've lost some sand in that southern section, whereas the other two areas, the trend has been. But in essence, one way of looking at this is there's 400,000 cubic yards out there now, more than when they constructed the project, which is a positive thing. Now, in full disclosure, I think I said this last year too, this isn't because of the genius of the design of this beach nourishment project. These are natural phenomena that are taking place offshore because of the wave climate, because I know we've had a rough winter, so to speak, but up until June, we hadn't had a whole lot of big storms, certainly not summer storms. We see this trend up in Duck. We see this trend up in Currituck County, where what we think is happening is material that has moved even further offshore than that 24-foot contour in periods probably prior to the 2017 project going in, or around the 2017 project going in. Sand gets moved really far offshore during some of these bigger storms. And if you have multiple years in a row of calm weather, you can actually move sand from deeper water just inside of that minus 24-foot contour. So I think most of that sand is a benefit of that trend coming in. But if the project is gaining sand, that's a positive. So it's a little bit of good design. It's a little bit of good luck as well. All right, and so these are the volume change rates. Over in the central section, what you're looking at are the rates of change, the volume rates that occurred between 2017 and 2022, so 5 years prior to the project going in. And what we designed the project for is rates that are somewhat similar to, actually, let me back up for a second. Up until about 2020, when we designed the project, we only had data from 2017 to 2020. And that data showed that we were losing about 3 or 4 cubic yards of sand per linear foot per year. And so that's what we designed the project with. But between 2020 and 2022, that same phenomena that I was talking about that's been occurring for 3 or 4 years now, we gained some sand. So in essence, we designed the project to lose about 3 cubic yards per year, but the rates ended up being a little lower than that. But if you look on the right-hand side, that's what the project is actually doing. In every section, northern, central, and southern, we're gaining volume. So what I'm saying is those numbers on the right-hand side could be as low as, if they were negative 3 feet per year, we were losing negative 3 feet per year. That's kind of what the project was designed for. But right now we're gaining, far more than 3 per year. Okay, and then these are the same rates over on the right-hand side, but this is what's occurred over the last year. I did mention that we have gained over the last 12 months. We did gain material in the northern and central, but we lost some material in that southern section. It'll be interesting to continue to monitor that. But since the project went in, we are still at a positive, a net positive in that southern section. All right. Let's briefly talk about project performance. This graph over on the right is kind of an interesting graph. We used it to show cumulative changes in the volume. So the first survey we had ever done in Southern Shores was done in 2017. And so if you zero that out, you can see that over the period of time from 2017 to 2020, there was a negative trend. That's that 3 cubic yards a linear foot per year that I was just talking about. But between the time that project went in and the time the project was built in 2020, there was actually a gain of volume. And then this big spike represents the gain from the beach nourishment project. This spike here represents the gain from 2022 to 2023. And then we've been sort of stable over the last year from 23 to 24. And then these different colors show if you wanted to track that same volume in the central section. But over here on the left, what we said was we're looking at the area south of 4th Avenue now, because we're talking about the project performance in terms of maintaining that storm damage reduction. So when we built the project, we had placed 286,200 cubic yards in that section that was meant to be that advanced fill, the amount of fill that we could lose and we would still maintain the design. Between November 2022 and June 2024, we've actually gained 211,600. So we're close to 500,000 cubic yards. If you look at it as that advanced fill, in the next 3 years of the project before we would get to 2017, instead of having 286,000 cubic yards of advanced fill, we more or less have 500,000 cubic yards of advanced fill there. So we would say, looking at that, the project is performing well in that southern section. And that was just to show that advanced. Okay, so in the northern area, we were talking about the usable beach. We had determined prior to the project being built, based on some averages of other places in the town of Southern Shores, we were looking to try to maintain the average width, which we determined was from plus 12-foot contour up by the dune down to the plus 4-foot contour, which is kind of where the water line would come up, where the wave run up would come at a high tide. That's about the 4 foot. So if you measure that distance horizontally, we're trying to maintain an average of 84 feet per year. Before the project went in, we had measured it at just under 60 feet, 57 feet. But as of June 2024, the average was 93.5 feet. So we're in excess of that 84 feet. And that is that's a positive. So for all of the reasons that we were looking at, the project appears to be performing well at this point in time. Here's just a couple of photos. So I've got a photo in the central, photo in the south, and a photo in the north. This is from the Hilton Garden Inn Pier at Kitty Hawk. So that picture all the way in the upper left-hand corner is just before construction. The picture on the upper right is right after construction. In fact, I think that's pipe out on the beach there. So that would be the unequilibrated beach. It's really wide there. And then December 5th, which I think is when I was up here last year, giving the annual report, is that picture in the bottom left. And then you can see the recent picture from this afternoon, December 3rd, on the right. And the main thing I'd point out is, last year we had all of the sand fencing here, but you can really see how much sand that sand fencing is caught. That vegetation is taken really, really well. It's a testament to the folks that are planting and putting in the sand fence. All of the dunes look really good. Similar picture up around Dolphin Run. This would be before the project was built, but I've tried to capture the same walkover in all of these pictures. So this is what it looked like after the project was constructed after in the spring of 2023. You can see all the new fencing, all the planting. Then this was in the winter last year. Sand fence continues to catch sand. Now you see a year of that growth out there and a new row of sand fencing out there in front of it. The dune is just really taken off. Looks fantastic. And then finally up around Hillcrest, looking south of the walkway there, same sort of progression there. One thing I know that the town was trying to use, that excess sand fencing that was from the project, and they've installed all of that and done some vegetation. One thing I noticed up there today, though, is that This the sand fencing and the vegetation is working fantastic. But if you think about that usable beach width that we talked about up in the northern part, if we continue to place sand fence up there in that northern section and it continues to catch sand and builds up that dune and it vegetates, what will end up happening is you're going to shorten that usable beach from the dune section. And you may, because we're only looking at a specific contour, those numbers could start to decrease, not only from the ocean, eroding away sand, but also from that dune building out. So in terms of that, just something to keep an eye on in terms of management. All right, couple of next steps slides, and I'll wrap this up. A few things that I just put in front of the mayor, the council, town manager to be thinking about. I'll talk a little bit about that regional sand resource investigation that we've been working on for a couple of years. I've got a one slide to evaluate the budget for the 2027 maintenance event. Also, we'll probably start the planning process for permitting and design of the 2027 project. I know it feels like we just finished the last project. Probably by summer of next year. We've talked to Town of Duck as well about starting this cooperative process about applying for permits and so forth for the 2027 project. We could obviously anticipate monitoring the beaches again in 2025. We typically do that in May or June. And then we're constantly looking at ways of optimizing the project. One of those I'll talk about here in the slide that talks about the budget here in just a second. So I think I might have talked a little bit about this last year. We had gotten a grant from the state's coastal storm damage reduction mitigation fund, provided a match with money that Dare County put up to try to identify future sources of sand. The beach program in the northern Dare County, Duck, Southern Shores, Kitty Hawk, Kildare Hills, it's performing really well. It's a testament to all the effort that's gone into this. But you have to have a sand source to be able to maintain these projects, out into the future. And so this study was basically to look at sand resources in the offshore and try to identify whether there's 30 years of sand. So this is just some pictures of the equipment that's used to try to identify those sand resources in the offshore. We had run through an exercise about a year ago that took, sort of a conservative approach of, if we're trying to find sand for 30 years, how much would we expect to place each event? How many events would it be? What's the efficiency of being able to dredge in these locations? The dredges can't suck out every grain of sand in a borrow site. So taking into account all those different things, we came up with a conservative number of about 37.5 million cubic yards of sand needed for that area. So we went to work. We did a whole bunch of that geophysical surveys in some areas offshore of not only the northern area, the Four Towns project, but also we're looking at some areas in the southern part of Currituck County. And these were some preliminary estimates that we finished up our study back in 2023, the first year of the study. We came up with some ballpark estimates of about 120 million cubic yards of sand in these various locations. So some of those are closer than the current borrow areas. Some of them are a little bit further away. But in terms of volume, we felt pretty good that you could prove that there was 30 years of sand in that. And so in 2024, we've gone back and done some detailed investigations into some of these areas. This is an area right off of Kitty Hawk and Kildare Hills. We identified some sub areas that are just north of the borrow area that was used in the last project. And just last month, we finished up taking some cores in this area. So probably in the next couple of months, we'll have some results and potentially have some additional borrow sites that could be used for the 2027 project. We also looked at a site just north of the town of Duck and have identified some areas in there, took some cores. And if we could identify a borrow area in that location, it may actually reduce some of the unit costs for both the Duck and the Southern Shores project. So I think this is the last slide I've got. This is a slide with some numbers that comes out of what we call the beach maintenance plan. It's a plan that was put in place so that if a storm comes and impacts the area, we've got all of the information that FEMA would need to determine whether or not you guys were eligible for reimbursements if it was a declared disaster. but it's got a lot of information about sand sources and maintenance and future costs and so forth. One of the things that we've been looking at through those maintenance plans is if the projects continue to perform at expected level, there's the possibility that we could achieve some cost savings by in 2027 not placing enough material out there to last 5 years, but placing enough material out there to last 6 or 7 years. And if you think about this in terms of maintenance over a 30-year period, if you have to bring the contractor back every 5 years and pay for that mobilization, you could annualize that cost out and figure out how much money you would pay every year bringing the contractor back once every 5 years. But if you could bring them back once every 6 years or every 7 years, even though the project would cost more money, you could save money on an annualized basis. And so we started looking at that not only for your community, but all 4 towns combined, the cost savings to the county. But these are some numbers of where the volumes sit right now. So in that first column, it shows in 2027, if we built the project for 5 years, we would need that amount of volume. But if we did it for 6 and 7, the volume would go up, the cost of the project would go up. But if you annualize that cost out over 30 years, you would save that.
Is this Southern Shores or all?
This is just Southern Shores. The savings to, Dare County, the whole project is, like 750,000, almost $1 million. It's a big number. So just something to think about. You've got the cost of what we would expect, that the 2027 project to be. We'll keep updating those as we see different erosion rates, as we talk to the other communities as well about potentially doing this. But I do want to put that out there as something to be thinking about. And that is the last slide that I've got. So happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Ken?
That 460, we have an average volumetric increase over the last 2 years. We're just seeing.
So the 420 and the 460, those assume the 3 cubic yards a linear foot that we designed the project for. Okay. So if we better that, we could reduce those numbers.
We do pre-con and it looks like it keeps.
Correct. Okay. Correct. So, I mean, if the trend continues, like some of those numbers will come down, but for now we've kept those numbers somewhat conservative.
Do you have a table, this is just for my nerdiness, but the pre-con 22 shoreline to the post-con 2022? You got it across the multiple years in the report here.
So you're looking for volumes?
I'm just curious because some people look at that table and they see like an 18-foot retreat over 3 years of the shoreline at that +6 or whatever, but they need to realize we probably built it out 30 feet or something.
Yeah,
like
so the south of 7th Street, I think we built it out like 124 feet or something like that. But those numbers are in. There's a combined report that each of the towns got. That's a post-construction report or project completion report
from previous
from the construction project that would have all of that, those types of tables, those types of numbers. Yep.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear here. Option 1 to 5 year on maintenance cycle, that's maintenance putting sand back on the beach, right?
Correct.
Current cost would be $6.5 million.
Correct. That includes everything from the permitting, the design, the mobilization costs, and it assumes that all 4 towns would build the project, the same way that it was done previously.
We're in the 3rd year of the last cycle.
We're in the second year,
year.
so 24, 25 will be 3 years in.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
But that's the total cost. That's not necessarily the Southern Shores cost because there is, a portion of that that's picked up by the county as well. I also, Cliff and I were just talking, I think he's briefed some of you, but there's the same account that we got money for that sand search from. Last year, we went back and we applied for some money for the actual 2027 construction project on behalf of Dare County. The situation there is that Dare County is willing to help fund these projects, but they're also trying to figure out how to make that fund be sustainable as long-term as possible to maintain the Nags Head project, the Avon project, the Buxton project, and your projects. And so we came up with a formula where we were able to show the state that at the rate they're providing funding through this coastal storm damage mitigation fund and the way that their old beach management plan, their beach beach and inlet management plan was written, that we could justify that we should get $7.5 million for the next 4 towns project from the state pot. But we said, look, you only have $10 million up for grabs in 2024. We're not going to ask for 75% of that, but we're going to ask for $2.5 million this year. We're going to ask for $2.5 million next year in 25, because we know you're going to put out another 10 million. And even though we don't know what you might put out for grant funding in 2026, we're going to ask for $2.5 million that way to get our 7.5 million that we felt we had justified with this table. So we put the application in, and the state they awarded Dare County all $7.5 million in the first year. So we probably shouldn't go back and ask for more money this coming year, but I mean, that's already in the bank. So it's to go to this project, but Dare County will see it as, okay, this is going to take $7.5 million of our money that we were going to put towards this project. And now we have that $7.5 million to sustain the fund, further off into perpetuity. So it makes their cost partnership, more sustainable for the long term. So it's a good thing. But yeah, that was an interesting story.
Anything else for Ken?
Just, you mentioned, go ahead.
Oh,
You mentioned a hot spot in town. I don't know which station that was. Let's see it in the report though.
Yeah, there is some there. I didn't put it in the presentation. There is a spot in the discussion in the report that specifically talks about that hot spot, and I want to say it's performing pretty well. Like we anticipated it was going to erode faster than other areas. And I don't think we see that erosion faster. We put more sand in that area, but I don't think we see it eroding any faster. But there is some language in the discussion section of the report that deals specifically with that hotspot section. So.
Last chance.
Paul.
Call me anytime, Matt.
I will.
Ken, thank you very much.
Happy to geek out, right? Yeah.
Appreciate your comprehensive presentation and making it so we can understand. And we appreciate you being with us tonight.
Excellent.
Thanks
Thanks
very
for
much.
having me.
All right.
Appreciate it.
thank you much.
Next on our agenda is a public hearing. So I'm going to hand it over to our attorney, Philip Hornthal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I now open the public hearing for ZTA 24-05 zoning text amendment application submitted by the town of Southern Shores to amend town code section 36-171. And I call town staff to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Hornthal. Good evening again, Mayor and members of council. You all are now considering ZTA-2405. You all will recall that at the April 9th, 2024 council meeting, you all adopted ZTA-2402. And that established that a lot disturbance stormwater management permit is required to remove trees greater than 6 inches in diameter, measured at 4.5 feet above the ground in a front, side, or rear yard setback on any unimproved lot in the general commercial zoning district. It also establishes penalties for not obtaining a permit when removing trees in a setback area as noted. At the June 17, 2024 planning board meeting, the board recommended additional amendments to section 36-171 that established that a lot disturbance stormwater management permit should be required in all zoning districts, not just the general commercial district. And in addition, the board recommended amending town code section 36-171 to address dead, diseased, or hazardous trees. As a result, town staff has drafted ZTA-2405, which is on the agenda tonight, and accomplishes both. So you all are already familiar with the requirement in the general commercial district for tree removal in the front, side, or rear setback. Now we are also proposing to add language that establishes when a tree emergency is deemed to exist and the conditions in which they can be removed. two situations or two different instances when a tree emergency should be deemed to exist. One is when an imminent danger or hazard to persons or property due to damage due to the tree resulting from fire, motor vehicle accident, or natural occurrence such as lightning, windstorm, ice storm, flood, insect damage, or disease, or other similar event. Or if a tree must be removed in order to perform emergency repair or replacement of public or private water, sewer, electric, gas, or telecommunications utilities. In the case of a tree emergency, the zoning administrator would have the authority to issue a lot disturbance stormwater management permit within 72 hours after a tree is removed in an emergency, or waive the requirement for a lot disturbance stormwater management permit altogether. Those are the basic provisions from the proposed language, and town staff has determined that these amendments are consistent with the town's currently adopted land use plan, specifically LUC 10 and LUC 10.2. And also the town planning board recommended approval of this CTA at the November 18, 2024 planning board meeting.
Is anyone signed up to speak? No? Would anyone like to speak? I now close the public hearing and turn it back over to the mayor.
Thanks, Philip. Council, do you have any questions for Wes specifically? Or do you want to just commence with a discussion, or what are your thoughts?
I can make a motion.
Okay.
I would motion that we adopt ZTA 24-05, omitting the text change on page 3, line 12 and 13.
Page 3, which in our books is on page 22.
Yes, ma'am.
And yeah, right up here at line 13. So it would read, in addition to the provisions above, in the general commercial district, no removal of trees greater than, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Any need for further discussion?
Okay, so this keeps the tree emergency section.
Correct.
Right.
But it restricts the ordinance to only commercial properties.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
As we amended
As
it
we
last time.
originally.
As we originally intended, because that's where
Right.
the vegetative buffer requirements is on commercial,
But we do get the emergency.
and we got the emergency language in there.
Okay, I'm
Correct.
good with that.
Any other discussion?
No.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. The amended ZTA passes 4-0. Okay. Next is consideration of Chickahawk sidewalk maintenance, which is on page 25 of our books, Council. And I believe Cliff is going to lead us through this one.
So back in the early 90s, the Chickahawk Property Owners Association came to the town and asked for permission to be able to build some sidewalks along streets in the Chickahawk subdivision. I believe they started on Juniper, and over the years added to that, included Spindrift and Chickahawk. There's a easement that the town has, that the Chickahawk Property Owners Association gave the town, I think in 2012, that allowed us to put the town beach access parking lot at the north end of some common property that they own at Chickahawk and NC 12. That easement's been in place. It allows us to use it for beach access, parking, pedestrian use. There's additional land there, but what we've asked in response to Chickahawk property owners requesting that the town take over maintenance of these sidewalks, that we expand that easement to allow for additional uses and to include about 12,000 more square feet. That additional space would give the town the ability for use, maybe uses that we hadn't contemplated yet, but it could be additional parking, it could be storage, it could be, additional uses above and beyond just parking. For several years, there was an agreement in place that staff put into a memorandum of understanding, I think in 2019, that spells out that the Chickahaw property owners association will maintain the concrete, bulkhead, vegetation, overhang, grass cutting. What they've asked is for the town to take over the actual maintenance of the concrete, and they'd still like to maintain the right-of-way vegetation, trees, landscaping, and so forth. And that's how we came to the request for the additional space on the easement. We wanted to know what we were getting into, and we feel like there's some work that needs to be done to those sidewalks pretty quickly, and we bid that work, and that information's in your packet. And it's been several months since that project was bid. The low bidder is willing to honor his contract. I don't think we'll get a better cost. I don't think concrete's going down. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to take care of some failing infrastructure in town, in our right of way. The same contractor that did the NC 12, the new path, and is doing the improvements, was also the low bidder. So the timing for that purpose is right as well. So what I'm asking for is the council to approve the proposed amendments to the current easement to provide the town's expanded use area. If you agree that we can proceed with the maintenance of about $79,000, we feel like at this time we don't need to ask for a budget amendment. We have some savings from other projects that at this time can absorb that amount of money.
So you would estimate that these repairs would begin sometime
Within the next,
soon
right after they finish the work.
on 12?
Yes, ma'am. So
Got
I
it.
think it'd be very soon.
Okay. Any questions for Cliff?
So I'm just not clear about, so they have the obligation to maintain their sidewalks and just stop doing it?
Well, I think it became, as the infrastructure started to age and deteriorate, it quickly realized they didn't have the resources to do what needed to be done.
Are they willing to contribute anything to the town for taking this over?
That additional space for the easement.
The 12,700 square feet additional easement.
The easement is perpetual
Yes, sir.
and allows us to do whatever we want.
Yes, it gives them the ability as a courtesy to be able to
comment.
review any
Yeah.
comment on anything we might plan to do, but I think it addresses any need we would have moving forward.
So that additional easement, I'm looking at the map, is a wooded area, and it's right, there are houses on either side of it.
Yes, ma'am, and the easement includes a 10-foot vegetative buffer on,
So they'd have a buffer.
yes, ma'am.
Correct. One potential future use may be ocean rescue. Facilities might be storage put there, that's an option.
Is that all we get?
What if, I mean, this is
Somehow I
this is
feel
off the
like,
wall.
somehow I feel like we're getting hoodwinked here.
I'll say this.
Go ahead.
I mean, what would be the difference? Like, is this easement as strong or as useful to us as like a fee simple title of the property? And like, if we wanted to construct a bathhouse at the beach access, would we be able to under this term?
I don't have solid answer to that question right now. But I may, the fact is, these sidewalks are in the town's right of way, and we're liable for the condition they're in, and.
That they let them get in.
Right.
And
And
I'm a
so,
property owner in Chickahawk, okay? But they let them get in it, all right? I mean, that,
I don't know what, we could try to litigate this memorandum of understanding and get them to honor their agreement, but I mean, I realize I'm standing here and asking you to take over someone else's problem, but I see it as eventually going to be our problem anyway.
no argument was there, but a contribution to help us out, help the town out, the rest of the residents of the town on fixing the sidewalks, I think would be in order.
We've
And
made that.
That's my 2 cents, okay?
I understand.
Or something else, maybe they want to deed us the parking lot. I'm just dreaming, but, you know, and I know they own a lot of property, okay? But the association does, which, you know, I mean, I pay my dues like everybody else, but I just feel like we're being handed the sidewalks, fix them, you know, that they let deteriorate. And the association did that. That's just, I mean, simple way of looking at it.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, and my worry is if they stop maintaining the parks, you know, they have other properties that they're supposed to maintain. So what if they stop maintaining those? I mean,
That I think is a little cleaner because it's clearly not in the public right of way.
Right.
My concern is the
Yeah,
public right.
that's the
of way.
problem with the sidewalks, is they're
right-of-way.
actually in our street right of ways.
right.
And,
I got it.
and it's that liability issue. And unfortunately, I think there's so many obstacles to conveying property. I mean,
On the association.
because of of how complicated it is to try to get an association to convey property, that we're better off with an easement, which is why I think we got the original easement for the parking lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it was easier to do an easement than it was to convey property.
yeah.
And so now what we're doing is we say, well, we'd like to have a little bit more space just in case we need more space in the future. So I kind of think it's the best deal we're going to get.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I was
Probably.
reading the uses and purposes section. I mean, if we wanted to do something more grand than construction of a shed or two, we could always revisit it.
Yeah.
We need to take care of the sidewalks.
Yeah, unfortunately, the sidewalks,
better the
people look
town.
at sidewalks, they think town, because now we've
yeah.
got so many sidewalks everywhere. We've got them on 12, we got them on Dogwood, East Dogwood. I mean, you know, they're all over town now, so.
And no budget amendment, Cliff, because we've saved so much money thus far.
Yes, sir.
For now,
For now.
Don't say for now.
for now.
But the,
At
what I'm
this
getting
time.
from Councilman Botanic, I don't want to come back with the budget amendment.
You what now?
I said, I don't want to come back with a budget amendment for this.
I just think some kind of contribution.
I understand.
I mean. we're
What do you
all
think about the easement beyond just the sidewalk part of it? I know they're interlinked, but are you okay with the easement as written, Mark? So it's,
Yeah, I mean, it gives them, I mean, I don't think they'd stand in our way. Whatever we need to do there for the residents of the town and also for the visitors. I mean, I like that idea of a bathhouse and that kind of stuff there. I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
For folks who are coming off there, I think we maintain what's there now. They just shower off right there out in the open, you know, at the parking lot there and clean their feet and everything, so. Yeah, I am. I just feel like there should be some contribution. But if I remember right, you told us the sidewalks, or somebody said that there's about $55,000 worth of work, and now it's up to 79. Because of when the survey was done. We did a survey, didn't we? Do a survey with somebody? Yeah.
The engineer went out and did a,
Like a cursory,
Yeah, cursory. and he
as
came-
opposed to a detailed.
Detailed. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, council, anybody else have questions or concerns for Cliff?
And if we don't approve
Maybe.
this tonight, if we don't approve this tonight, what's the alternative? I mean, we got the sidewalks, I understand. I mean, any idea? Do you think there's any movement on this part of the folks you're working with there? For a contribution?
no, sir.
No.
That
you don't.
asked,
All right,
asked and not.
That
received.
dog did not hunt.
all right, that dog doesn't hunt. All right.
Okay. So the staff recommends the proposed amendments to the current easement. I would like to make a motion that we approve the staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Motion carries. Okay. Last item before the next general public comment is on page 52 concerning Historic Landmarks Commission. We have Tony DiBernardo has indicated that he's not wanting to serve on, give somebody else the opportunity to serve on the Landmarks Commission. We have a couple of folks who said they would like to be reappointed, Charlie Andrews and Mike Garacino. And we have a alternate, Wanda Brett Jordan, has said that she would accept an appointment to the Landmarks Commission. So I would like to make a motion to reappoint Charlie and Michael and appoint Wanda to the Historic Landmarks Commission.
Second.
Any discussion?
Welcome, Wanda.
Yeah, thank you, Wanda, for stepping up.
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else want to do public comment? Oh, Cliff, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to read a statement. I wanted to assure the citizens of the town of Southern Shores that Wes Haskett has the full support of the town, town manager and all staff as he has since he began his employment. Wes has followed all laws and town ordinances and applied them fairly and consistently.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would echo that statement.
I would like to include the
Myself.
town council in that statement. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Cliff. Now, any public comment? No one signed up, but I'm happy to let anyone come up and make public comment. Mark, come on up.
This would be very brief. I was going to speak in defense of Les Haskett, but he begged me not to. Anyway, I'm sorry for going over 3 minutes, and I now realize that I had an opportunity to speak later than I thought. So thank you.
No
Thank you.
problem. No problem.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay. Council business. Mark, do you want to start us?
Okay, sure. From the tour board, we continue to the business, but I think you probably saw on the Outer Banks Voice or something. September numbers came in and occupancy was down 11%, which gives us a year-to-date negative occupancy of 5%. Again, I'll just reiterate that the tour board, I mean, this was a resettling year. I mean, we had 3 incredible different years after COVID and nobody could really get a handle on what was going on. When you look versus, you can't even use 2019 as a benchmark year anymore. We're using 2020 to a degree. It's still, the county's doing very well on tourism. I can assure you that the folks at the tourist board, at the tourism office over there are working very hard to get visitors in here. The good news that in September was the fact that meals were still up again, as 2 years in a row. They were up 1.5%, and we're up 1.29 year to date. So from what I'm hearing, Thanksgiving was pretty strong, both at retail and from a rental perspective. And they're always late on the earnings side. So October was kind of slow. Everybody knows that already. So we'll see where it's going. But the tourism board is working hard. There's a lot of good plans for next year. A lot of events. There's more events. There's been more requests from different organizations to help fund the events, and that's where the money goes. That's raised by the taxes is to fund these big events like the oyster roast and everything else that goes around here. Duck Festival. I think a couple meetings ago, we mentioned we don't have anything in the town that we really fund yet, or we could apply. You know, that's something to think about going forward, but it takes an organization to come forward and have an event. So anyway, that's it.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
Paula?
Well, I want to publicly apologize to Lynn and all the people that planted grass behind my house that I didn't show up to help. I was out of town. I felt extremely guilty, but I did provide parking. Yeah, the grass is fabulous. You all have just done an unbelievable job. And some of the statistics that you send out in the email, I'd love to see us put about how many sprigs have really been planted. I'd like to see everybody know that. It's just amazing. The other thing that's not as much fun is that we received notification last week that some of the funding that we expected for the Mid-Currituck Bridge did not show up, like $425 million that was expected from a federal grant part of the infrastructure bill. And I don't know the whole story on this, but I do serve on the Albemarle Regional Planning Organization, and I plan to touch base with David Whitmer, who is the executive director. This is all kind of new, and I don't think anybody really has a plan. It's not seen as being fatal to having the bridge built, but it certainly is a setback. The ARPO meets in January, but after our January meeting, so I'll try to touch base with them and come back to the January meeting and give as much information as we can get at that time.
Thank you. Matt?
Just two things. We had our inaugural meeting in the corridor committee about 2 weeks ago, and it was nice, mostly an introductory section and batting around sort of scope and final work product ideas. And it was a really good conversational group, and I think it's going to be positive moving forward. And I think we're going to be reviewing a mission statement and further scope of work in our next meeting next week. And then also the Housing Task Force met, gosh, I guess that was last week. They're running together a little bit. So that was November 25th. We had a draft report that we're going to produce. I think we're going to go through a couple amendments with it and adopt the final report at our meeting this month on December 16th. I think it's 16th. But that's moving ahead, and I'm looking forward to the report and what comes out of the report, what kind of working groups we create out of that.
Sounds good. Thanks, Matt. So our next meeting, this is our last meeting for 2024. Our next meeting is January the 7th. And so between now and then, we will have some holidays. So Merry Christmas to all and Happy New Year in advance, even though it's only December 3rd. And just, beach grass is like it's the new thing. It's the new trending thing. It's all over social media, beach grass. We got scouts planting beach grass. We got, people that live in Southern Shores. I mean, beach grass. It's a thing. Thank you, Len and Barb.
I think we saw the effects of it on the.
I think Ken Wilson's pictures.
Thursday.
Yeah, the pictures.
Matter of fact,
Thursday, they're doing it.
Thursday, another beach grass, and Ken is warning us not to plant too much beach grass on the north end. So anyway, that's just funny. Right now, I'm going to move on to making a motion that we go into closed session as per NCGS 143-318.11 A3, attorney-client privilege. So there's a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're in closed session.